We are online. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Lunar with Christeen Skinner. I'm your host, Rochang. Once a month, me and Christeen, we will go online and talking about the recent transit and what's happening at this moment. So, hi, how are you, Christeen?
I'm very well, and how amazing to be speaking across the world again. Amazing.
I think as we getting out of a pandemic and much easier for traveling. So I think now I will be doing this more and more. So it's like connect with you by Zoom and from different corner of the world for for a session about discussion, and that is quite interesting because how technique help us. Imagine maybe
yes,
like a.
It helps really well, except for the time zone nonsense. And this is the third time this week when I've thought that something was settled and it was an hour out. It's so difficult getting these time zone things right. But anyway, Mercury doesn't stay retrograde forever, thank God. So hopefully next
No. Yeah, and I have to apologize. I make a mistake today. We did say 10:30, and then I was like, okay, I still have time. Until we say, I thought we said, oh no, I make mistake. Yeah, and when you calculate the time zone, especially, you just like, yeah, probably this time.
Yes, but we've managed it.
Yeah. Yeah. So okay, so we have a lot of interesting to talk. I mean, the market performing is pretty interesting at this moment, and you don't know where they're going. We astrologers, we probably know the trend, but when you look at the performing, it's like wow, it's like a little bit very different. But there's something else maybe have an impact to the market, and I learned that from you. And that since I heard about that, I always have that space weather website on my phone and on my computer. Always they will send me alert. So when you today say, should we talk about that? Of course, I just received that alert and I say, wow, again, we were going to talk about a solar storm, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not unusual for this point in the solar cycle. That bit is not unusual. Right? What is unusual really is that this is so very close to that very big storm, which was April the 23rd, which was just after the solar eclipse, if you remember. Right? Yeah. And so we've got this storm going on now. It takes a couple of days before the effect of that is felt on Earth. But what's really interesting is that there's a wonderful study done for the NASDAQ index, which shows that it tends to fall 2 to 3% up to 5 days after one of these storms. So the implications of that are that if this storm is going to hit us over the next couple of days, then next week should see a downturn. Now, if that were the case, we have to look back to see, and that's independent of whatever Jupiter might be doing or whatever. This is, although you could argue, and I'm sure it's the case, that where the planets are in relation to the sun makes a difference to how it behaves, but we don't know all of that yet. But to go back on this and to say, well, actually, what did happen on April the 23rd? Did the rule apply? Well, if you look at the Australian index, especially because the solar eclipse, of course, was visible across much of Australia, the northern part into Indonesia, so closer than we are here, of course, is to look to see, well, what happened? Well, in fact, all indices were down about 2%, between 2 and 3%, but it was exaggerated in their part of the world. So this, so it's going to be quite interesting to see whether or not it's the same effect in the same parts of the world next week, because you would actually expect it, given the struggles with Ukraine and everything, you would actually expect it would be European markets that would be really seriously affected. But, away from the markets, right? Because, I mean, the reason that the markets intrigue me is that they're a very easy way to measure whether or not planets and the sun are actually affecting us at all, right? Because, I don't really go into the psychology of it. But if you're actually saying that in the 5 days following a solar storm, people tend to, I mean, markets are just traders. That's all they are, right? So if they are trading negatively, if they're bringing things down, then that applies even if you're not a trader. So in the 5
Mhm.
days following a solar storm, you're unlikely to be upbeat, and it's possible that your health will suffer as well. So it's
Mhm.
really good to monitor all of this. The amazing exception to the rule, and I think this to me is just absolutely fascinated me, is that although the markets have gone down, that's not
Mhm.
been true of Bitcoin, which did exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
Can you believe? I'm so sorry. How do we deal with the phone, which is it rings? How do I deal with
Yep.
it? Let me
Yeah.
just stand
When
up and
we
see
sure,
what's on.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so
It
it's
was
interesting that Bitcoin should have done precisely the opposite. Now, does that mean the next time, is it going to do precisely the opposite this week as well? Will be fascinating to see.
it is always interesting to learn this kind of a difference, especially I say what I think is because Bitcoin is a um new
It's a new
target to
concept. Yeah,
learn.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we probably still have a lot of things to learn when we observe the crypto markets.
Well, there's a wonderful guy. If I can do a plug for somebody, there's a guy called Robert Weinstein I think he's in Seattle. He's on the Pacific coast, but he does
Mhm.
he trades Bitcoin really well with his astrology. I mean, absolutely first class stuff.
Wow,
I think
wow.
he has his own newsletter with it. It's really he really focuses on one, and I think he's beginning to
Mhm.
understand its temperament. But where we're both absolutely agreed is we don't have enough data. 12 years is not
Mhm.
14 years. It's not
No.
enough, right? You do much
Mhm.
better when you've got the Dow. You've got
Mhm.
20 years of stuff to play with.
Mhm. Yeah, another thing when you mentioned about the crypto and the recent market performing, and we have to, I think in last Lunar reason, we also talk about this bank crisis, especially related to the First Republic.
Yeah. Oh, well, wow. I mean, it's not the only one, is it?
True, yeah.
It's not the only one at all. And it's really extraordinary, the actual dates when the news has come out. Because remember, a bank doesn't just collapse that morning. People would have known for
No,
months, 6 weeks beforehand, that
yeah.
this was going to happen. So the timing of the announcement is always interesting. And this one came, of
Mhm.
course, just after that lunar eclipse, which itself
Yes.
tied into the chart for the Federal Reserve Bank. So
Mhm.
that is all fascinating, and it's not finished. The whole thing about
No.
the banking crisis is not finished. Just as when Pluto first got into Capricorn, right, and we had
Mhm.
banking crises, we're likely to have it all the way through until Pluto leaves. So I don't
Mm.
think it's over yet. I'm really I'm concerned about this week, yes, but I'm also concerned about the last week in July. And
Mm.
if you think about it, it's which banks are most likely to be affected. How do you identify which is a safe bank, right?
Mhm.
And I'm not sure that you can. And astrologers are going to be able to write beautifully about whichever bank falls and say, yes, I could have forecast it. But actually, there's thousands of them. So how do you go through them all and choose which one's going to be affected? The clear thing, I think, is to say it's going to be Capricorn banks. So we should really be
Yeah.
concerned, we should be concerned about the banks of nations. That's what Capricorn is about. So we should
Mhm.
really be looking at and that's not to say the Bank of America is going to fail. That's not to say that, but it would actually take
Mhm.
your eyes to there and say, what are the fundamentals? Is it strong enough to survive, right? Has it diversified? What's the news from it? So I think astrology can help you determine what to look at.
Mm. It is very interesting because, especially, I think you mentioned that. Look at the name of the First Republic in your monthly report.
Yes,
Look at the name, First Republic is a very Aquarius.
it was totally Aquarius name, wasn't it? I mean, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. But the next
Yeah.
ones to fall, I think, will fall
Mm-hmm.
after Pluto's return to Capricorn. So I think the names
Mm-hmm.
reflect a Capricorn signature.
Capricorn. Mm. Yeah. Another thing, just a fun factor, because I was prepared a few things about Jupiter moving into Taurus. Then when I went on the Wikipedia to look all the financial data and all those banking things, and I realized one thing is not same bank, but very interesting. The fun fact is in 1988, on the March 16th, there is another bank called First Republic Bank in Texas
Wow.
went bankrupt.
Wow.
And that was after Jupiter moved into Taurus several days after.
Wow.
And then was like, interesting, the same name, but a different company, I think, a different company.
Yes.
Because that First Republic in Texas is much older. I think it was founded in 1920s or something.
That's really interesting. I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
And I feel like interesting because I said, is that same company? So I went back, double check. I don't want to make huge mistake, but they share the same name, and they are below two different groups.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because if we look back, we would have had Pluto going through Scorpio.
Yes.
So we would have had Jupiter one side of the zodiac and Pluto coming to the other, and there is something about the Jupiter-Pluto cycle that I consider it a wealth cycle, but I also call it a gambler's curse. Right? I don't know where I got this one from. Honestly, I can't remember, but it was a throwaway remark somewhere, and I thought it exactly encapsulated how if Jupiter is making hard aspect to your personal Pluto, right? And remember, that's going to affect a whole bunch of people that were born around the same time, right? And so it's got a generational pulse with it, right? Jupiter and Pluto, one is the god of the heavens, the other the god of wealth, minerals and what have you. There is this dance with the gods that goes on, and people will tend to I work with financial people all the time, and I dread it when they're going through a Jupiter-Pluto thing, because there's a compulsion to trade them. An absolute compulsion, and they will trade with bigger margins. And I can tell you an amazing story about this. I have been working with somebody for quite a while, a foreign exchange trader. Both of us knew exactly about this gambler's curse. He had Jupiter coming in to square his Pluto. He just said, okay, we're not going to trade for the week. Right, that's it over. He told me afterwards that it got to 5 o'clock on the Friday night, and he thought, well, maybe I'll just trade one thing. He managed to lose £10,000 that evening. He couldn't stop himself trading. He really got the bulk. And of course, what I hadn't explained was that Jupiter was going to go on and continue squaring his progressed Pluto the following week, right? So the losses compounded. It was absolutely, but it was a wonderful lesson in don't trade with that one. Don't do it.
Yeah. When you mentioned about this gambler's curse, I think there is a thing there that when we talk about Jupiter Pluto, because Jupiter make you feel I should be lucky. I should escape this. It's not dangerous for me. It will be dangerous for other people, but it's not dangerous for me. So I may be so lucky, so I can do something. I can just like avoid the dangerous things and then just trap into. But I think probably the coming up transit Jupiter Pluto. I think it's Jupiter Pluto square, right? Jupiter and Mars trigger it.
Yes.
From the cardinal fixed T-square become totally fixed T-square. That would be pretty interesting, right?
Well, I think we're already feeling it. I know it's not there yet, right? But I think we're already feeling it, because you've got, let's come away from the markets for a minute. You've got Kingdom has now offered these weapons to Ukraine. And Russia saying, if you do that, then you become fair game. You're a target too. You have the potential for escalation of that. Even if you take that element away, you still have the difficulty of Ukraine can't get its grain out. So you're actually making it extremely difficult to feed the world. And so you have this locked-in conflict. Now, the worst that can happen is a paralysis whereby nobody can trade with anybody else, right? That's one possibility. The other possibility is everybody blows themselves up to smithereens. That's another thing. How can we actually use that energy? Because it's about intransigence. And I noticed this. I had to attend a meeting last week, and I don't think I behaved terribly well at that meeting because I didn't like something that was going on. And I immediately said, I don't like this, right? And I'm, the way that I was heard was that I wasn't going to be open to considering any other option. That wasn't entirely true, but I could hear that this is what happened. And the planets move through all of us, of course, right? But if we're all viewed as being intransigent and difficult, then this situation is going to be really quite ugly this week.
Yes, I'm talking about Ukraine because if we know that Zelensky's chart, he has his a Mars in 0 Leo, and the Sun and the Venus in 5-degree Aquarius, and no wonder this is things are related to Ukraine, and could be, yes, I think when you see that T-square coming and the plus is Mars in Leo, 0-degree Leo will make it become a fixed T-square, then that could be something, that could be something.
Well, it could be. I mean, I think we have to hope that it's simply a momentary crisis and nothing actually happens, that it actually becomes a paralysis and then fades away. We have to just hope it's going to be fleeting. And the Mars effect is not, it's not like Jupiter, it's not going to be there for weeks, right? So we just have to, it's a quick surge and it will be over. But I would absolutely agree, this is not a pleasant picture at all. And if you look, I was just looking ahead to see when the next solar storm was due after this one, right? And the next May the 24th. I mean, there are many ones, the low frequency. The next main one is May the 24th, which then starts to pick up around the same time that we're picking up aspects to the recent solar eclipse. So, the last thing I would want to do is always talk about things going wrong, but we're talking about being aware of potential difficulty. That's, aware of crisis.
Yeah, so that's what we aware of. I think you're right no matter from what aspect of astrology. When we aware that, we can try to work with it, or at least we aware about it rather than we just like doing these things unconsciously and get panic. And I think we aware about that.
Accepting it will pass. The planet's gone. So you don't actually have. It's not compulsory to engage.
So talking about this, what we just mentioned about that in that T-square there is the in the Pluto in Aquarius, and then Mars in Leo, moving to Leo, and we have the Jupiter moving into Taurus. So these Leo things kind of maybe wildly Mars moving into this area could be, bring out a little bit more.
Can I tell you, I am just absolutely fascinated by this at the moment on a totally different level. As you know, because Michael is unwell, we have a stream of different people passing through here, therapists and all sorts of things. They are completely unaware of what I do, right? At some point, I overheard a conversation and it was clear everybody had birthdays around the same time and they were all Leos, right? And that, yes, not only were they Leos, but they'd also got rid of their respective partners, some of them, after many, many years, right? And all of them are now having discussions about dating, right? Dating apps, right? And, and you and I both know Venus is on its way for this extended stay in Leo, right? We can see ahead. We know it's going to go retrograde, right? But it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating, listening and watching, right? Because each story is different, but every single one is the propellant, is this thing about relationships and the need for something different. Pluto's Pluto has come to Aquarius, and they're now saying, well, I wasn't getting what I needed from there. Where am I going to go to get what I need, right? And as yet, there is no talk about repair. Now, this is not a statistical analysis. I'm telling you about what I've overheard in my kitchen, but it's just interesting.
That is very interesting, especially this moment when Pluto just give us a little test about the Pluto movie in the Aquarius, and the opposite side, Leo talking about.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that is very interesting. So, do you have any workshop or webinar coming up soon?
I do on Sunday. On Sunday, we're going to do our monthly financial. I can't call it a class. I really can't, because each one is a standalone event, right? But if anybody was interested, they can find it through the website financialuniverse.co.uk. So we've got that one coming up. The much bigger project, which is the big astro crypto thing.
Yeah.
We're not going to launch that until Mercury turns round and everything moves on.
Oh, yes.
But that's actually that's going really, really well now. So that's another kind of exciting thing. But I'm not doing anything for you for a little while now. I'm stood down.
No, but I'm planning. We have something. Me and Yevita have planning something coming up. But we always have you come back, of course.
Well, when you're having your discussion, can we discuss a Venus and money, right? Because I happened to open an old folder that had started the work on this and thought, actually, you know what, this is very interesting. It's coming round again, that it should be discussed now. It's good.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Yes. So cool. So I think maybe we will go through the next month, and I hope we will not have any delay or something. The next month I will be back in the UK, and then it's not Mercury retrograde.
Yes. Let's meet and have coffee, and then we can plan.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks, Christeen, and thanks everyone cope with us, because I was totally just like, I will do this, and I still have time. And I realized, oh no, it's 10:30. I was like, oh my God, Shem, let's go to do it very quickly. Thank you, Christeen, and thanks everyone for watching this Lunar Reason with Christeen Skinner. And then so we will see you next month. And if you want to join Christeen's crypto and monthly financial astrology, please find the Financial Universe website. Okay, see you guys. Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much, Rod.
Let me